Welcome back to This Week, where we feature leaders and reformers working to restore accountability, opportunity, and common sense to our government. Today's guest is Michael Maxenti. Born and raised in Southern California, Michael's story is one of resilience and conviction. From humble beginnings to the corporate boardroom, he rose through the ranks to become a division president at American Standard, creating jobs and witnessing firsthand how policy impacts working families. But when success clashed with principle, he chose integrity over comfort, selling his business to fight for reform and continuing that mission even when it meant personal sacrifice. Today, Michael stands for something bigger than politics, a movement to put Orange County and America first. He's calling for a government that serves its citizens, not special interests, for secure borders, fiscal sanity, and renewed strength in every sense, physical, moral, and spiritual. His message is simple. It's not Republicans versus Democrats. It's common sense versus corruption. And the time to take our country back is now. Welcome, Michael.
Welcome. Thank you, Dennis.
So we were talking earlier. You were telling me the origin of your last name, Maxenti, and some of your. Can you just walk me through that?
Yeah, I'm half Italian, and my grandparents came through Ellis Island.
Interesting. Where do you know where in Italy?
Yeah, and right now they're all up above Lake Como, hiding out in the Swiss Italian Alps.
Yeah.
Because my ancestry lineage goes back to the Emperor of Rome, who was killed by Constantine when they reunited the Roman Empire. To save their lives, when he was killed, they fled from Rome all the way up above Lake Como in the Valtellina Valley and up into the mountains. And today there's a village there called Girola Alta, where over 400 people with share my last name, and I'm on a Facebook group. They found me back in 2009.
Wow!
So
that's so interesting. I love hearing those stories because, like, my mom's side of the family, they're from Italy. My grandfather's side from Sicily. My grandmother's side from Amalfi. And they
never trust a Southern Italian, my dad said.
Well, we mixed here, so there's. But
he was laughing too when he said it.
I know there's this thing between. I know Northern Italians are so much more developed. That's where Turin is. It's like I know there's like a little bit of a. It's the same thing as East and West in America. I feel like. But in America, it kind of splits with the South, too. So it's like more like three different rivalries. But we never take it personally. No. It's more of like, yeah. But my family fled World War I. They fled. They went to Brazil. And that's where, I ended up originating and then ended up being born in New Jersey. But my grandfather, they were in his side of the family, even though they were first generation Brazilian, they were so committed to Italy, they went back to fight against Mussolini.
Oh, good. Very good. I was going to ask you, were they fascist when they left?
There are people on the internet who would love to go with that, but yeah, they fought against the fascists. They went there and literally, he was a parachutist, so he parachuted into Italy from the bottom of the boat.
Yeah.
So,
well, my grandparents immigrated here in 1918, and my grandmother, she was 8.5 months pregnant with my father when they were quarantined. They came over as WAPs, and I don't know if the audience knows the term WAP comes from. But
where is it? Yeah,
it was a big sign when they got off the boat, and they came across from Italy in Sturridge, which was at the bottom of the boat for the people who were poor. And when they got off, there was a sign without papers, and it was a big WOP without papers. You didn't have appropriate, immigration documents. So you were put into isolation. On Ellis Island. Here they came across in August. Can you imagine being in Ellis Island in August?
Yeah.
Just get off a boat. You're put in isolation for 30 days
it's hot and humid in New York.
Yeah. And then they got on a train because they had distant relatives in Petaluma, California, came across the United States in a train while she's now about to deliver. They get to Petaluma, California, and my dad was born literally within a week of their arrival in September of 1918.
Wow.
She unfortunately died 3 years later trying to give childbirth to what would have been my father's brother. They both died in childbirth. And 3 years later, 2 years later, when my dad was 5, in 1923, in the Great Depression, he committed suicide. He had lost his chicken farm and committed suicide. So my dad was orphaned as a little 5-year-old boy in Petaluma, and then was taken in by some distant Italian relatives. That's another story. But He never complained about that.
Yeah.
That's where family was absolutely everything to him, in his quiet way.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful story. It's a classic American story of tragedy and resilience, and just having that focus and going somewhere and building something. Your dad was first generation, basically an orphan, and he built so much, and you have so much now. You've also made a lot for yourself with American Standard. I want to hear how that started, because you started your career path. It is unusual nowadays. Most people don't make a career in a company like that and go all the way to the top, right?
Well, I was always seen as, everybody thought I was going to be an attorney.
Yeah.
I was class president in grammar school and high school, and everybody thought I was going to become an attorney. And I got an opportunity. I didn't have the money to go to law school right after San Diego State, and I'd been accepted at 2 law schools, but I didn't have the money. Yeah. And so I had done an internship because I changed from political science to public administration my senior year, when my counselor said, Maxenti, you've got to take 2 semesters of Spanish to fulfill your foreign language requirement.
Yeah.
And I said, I hate that, because I struggled with Spanish. And he goes, but there's a new major called public administration, where every one of your political science classes and everything qualify for. So you can easily finish in 2 semesters without a foreign language requirement. So I said, I'm now a public administration and a political science minor, so I didn't have to do it. But he got me a special internship because I was on the dean's list, and he got me a special internship with the county's CEO of the San Diego County, where I got my first exposure into government and how it operated. But that's for another story. But I met somebody when I was doing a project for the county, and he gave me his card. And he said, hey, kid, if you ever need a job, give me a holler. So when I was sitting there on a wall in Ocean Beach with my roommate and smoking a J, folks, I smoked J's back in those days. And I was despondent going, I got these great letters to acceptance to 2 law schools up in the Bay Area. I didn't have the money, and I go, I don't know what I'm going to do, dang it. And he goes, hey, why don't you call that guy that offered you a job and see what he's got? So I called this guy up. He offered me a job to move me to San Francisco to head up what became part of a company that launched the entire quick print industry. That got me into the printing business. Yeah. And so from that business, after 2 years, there were some issues with the founder, and I got hired to move back to San Diego by one of the leading printing companies in the nation. Yeah. And I took the opportunity to move back to San Diego and started in the printing business. And as a rookie salesman, the first one they'd ever hired with college who hadn't come up through the industry. And 8 years later, I was given the opportunity to be president after becoming their leading salesman, and did a number of things. And then American Standard Corporation, this is an important little story for people to understand who are your age and younger. American Standard, this company had been around for 90-some years when I got hired by them. Yeah. They were one of the profit leaders in the industry and one of the recognized national highest quality printing companies in the nation. American Standard bought them and added them to their graphic arts group, where they had companies around the country. But they brought in somebody from a business school to come in to manage it, because the head of the new graphic arts division had come out of Wharton Business School and thought everything could be managed from a financial statement, didn't know anything about the printing industry. And they came in and asked the president, who had been there 20-some years as president, to step aside, which he did. He was a wonderful, great man. He was a mentor of mine. So they could bring in their president. Well, over the next 5 years, that company went from a profit leader to losing money. Yeah. And
because he didn't understand the market.
No, they started thinking it. Wow, if you could make this much money doing this, if you just cut expenses here, cut margins there, and we would say, no, our clients are the most sophisticated advertising agencies and designers in the country. They will know the difference. That's why they pay a lot of money for us to produce their work. And so, long story short, the guy from New York, the head of the division, the president, comes out and says, okay, Max, if you're so smart, turn this company around. And so I did. But I didn't have the answers here. The average length of employment was 17 plus years. I'd been with the company 8 years at that point. So the first thing I did was I called a company-wide retreat on a Saturday, an 8 to 5 a.m., where I brought 240 employees together from the 2 manufacturing plants, one in Costa Mesa and San Diego, brought them together and said, look, guys, you guys have been here for years. I don't know how to turn this company around alone, but we can do it together. Today, we're going to rewrite all the operating procedures. I gave them a challenge. We know how it was. When I got hired here, everybody would say, that's the way we've always done it. We've seen the changes that have been made over the last 5 years and the results of those. Today, we're going to start a process to revamp the entire company, rewrite all the operating procedures. Long story a little shorter is we did that. Yeah. We turned the company around and turned it around in less than a year. It was making good money again, and it was back on a projection going up. And it was a challenge. It was fun.
That's amazing. You know, that's such a great story. And to me, it illustrates something that's a true quality of leadership, that a lot of people think that leadership is just going out and telling people what to do, X, Y, Z. A lot of it, good leaders, they know when to listen, and they take the feedback and they apply it. And they know, for example, they know that somebody who's been doing their job for 10 years and has that specific niche will know it infinitely better than somebody who's just an administrator or a manager and just kind of just looks at the grand scheme of things. So what you did was brilliant, and that's why it worked, because you involved the entire company, and you also cultivated from the start a team mentality where, like, everybody, okay, we're all in this together, you know?
I challenged them. I said, when we go into the breakout meetings that we're going to start, I said, when you think of that's the way we've always done it, now I want you to think that's the way we've always done it. What have we learned that can make it better? Yeah. Apply what we've learned, how we can make everything better. And then we put in a process to do it. And because of what I did with that, I got chosen a few years later by a national search for a division of Nissan Corporation to become the COO and do a startup for Nissan Corporation, the highest quality printing company in Japan. Wow. I was selected to be the COO and launch that company. I oversaw building a manufacturing facility in Irvine, got that company up and running and off the ground. And I did a similar thing there. I said, they're so great because the goal was to bring together the engineering expertise of the automotive industry with the precision of manufacturing of the Japanese, with the ingenuity and creativity of the Americans. That was the overarching goal, was to bring those three elements together. So what I said, what we did and what I launched was we started immediately with exchanges from our crews in the different divisions, departments, pre-press, press, binder, etc. We would take our top crews and send them to Japan for a week. And while we were doing that, they sent their crews over. So we did exchanges with around the clock. We'd have 3 shifts in each of the departments. So over the course of the next 3 or 4 months, we did these exchanges of crews. So we got to stand each other in their manufacturing facilities and ours, learn from each other, share what they did, what we did, and culturally exchange that. And from that, within 1 year, we were competing at the highest levels against the top printing companies in the nation here in the country. Yeah. And that was a great experience to learn the Japanese techniques of Kaizen and constant continuous improvement and their unique things that made their precision of manufacturing so great, and bring that together with the creativity and ingenuity of the Americans and the engineering expertise of the automotive industry and blend it together. And that was a great experience. But something that those experiences are what I want to bring to Congress because, and people will know, I often talk about one of the biggest problems we have and why our government has gotten us into these problems is we've got almost all the people we've elected are career politicians. They've come out of most of them, like my candidate that I'm against, the guy who's the incumbent. He came out of being raised in Palo Alto.
Who's the incumbent?
The incumbent is Dave Min. And Dave Min it typifies what I've been fighting against for 15 years. He come out of an elite background, went off to University of Pennsylvania, graduated from Wharton, went to Harvard, immediately got a position as in an advisory capacity to Chuck Schumer's office,
Wow.
Got moved back out here, given an associate professor's position at UCI with their connections to Democratic with UCI, got UCI special housing.
Mm-hmm.
Then when Katie Porter was then moving over from her state Senate seat to run for Congress, they immediately slotted him in, gave him millions of dollars. He got elected to replace her as our state senator. Mm-hmm. Then when she decided to run for California Senate, for the U.S. Senate from California, they moved him over into our congressional district. He just got elected last November, and he typifies it. He's the attorneys in our country are some of the most brilliant minds and trained people we have. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the vast majority of them, and in Congress we have over 70% our members are attorneys. Not one I've been able to find has been trained as a facilitator. Mm-hmm. What they're trained is as an advocate. They're trained
as activists,
well, an advocate. And an advocate is trained how to manipulate the jury, mm-hmm. the witness, the judge, and public opinion, how to manipulate the facts so that they can do one thing, win for their client, no matter if they know that client's guilty or wrong. It's all about a win for their side. And in Congress, that's exactly the attitude it's become over the years. It's not about developing solutions that will work on behalf of the people. It's about winning for their side, a party, without coming up with solutions. And I want to take the attitude that I took into business mm-hmm. And take that into Washington. There's a lot of really good people already elected mm-hmm. who need reinforcements so that they can stand up to do the right thing, who want to produce good results for the people. But because of the special interests and how that manipulates what the leadership of these parties has been doing, they have to stand down or they get primaried out and don't have a chance to do it. We need people in Congress who are going there with a commitment to work together to craft real solutions. And one of the most important elements of that is engaging citizens in the process of developing policy. And that's where citizens' assemblies, and there's a lot of good processes that can engage the citizens so that when you write legislation, it's effective. Mm-hmm. So we could go on, I could go on at length about that, but I took that same attitude after being the president of American Standard and the CEO for Nissan. When I started my own publishing business, I started and built over the next 20 years the second largest tourism publishing business in California.
That's amazing. That's there are a lot of different points that I want to hit at, but I think since we're back on the business topic, one thing I wanted to ask you, as a small business owner myself, I see just how nowadays it's so difficult to get into business in California. The barrier of entry is so unbelievably high, and in many cases, it seems like the county and the state don't want the moms and pops, the little guy, to be in business. They want the big corporations. From being in business for as many years as you have at both the entry level as well as the super high level and multiple corporations, have you seen, or to be more specific, what have you seen change in California's policy that has made it such a hostile place for businesses? Because to just take it back to one example, Bed Bath & Beyond just got out of Chapter 11, and they're reopening 300 stores nationwide. They specifically chose to not come to California because they said California is super hostile to businesses. And Gavin Newsom responded in the snarkiest way possible, which is unfortunate. But I'm just wondering, how do we get to this point? Did you see changes along the way? Has it always been like this?
Oh, no. Yeah. California used to be very entrepreneurial. When I started in business, I didn't start my own small business until 1994. So I can't speak with specifics before that, but the regulations that have been passed of what's burdened the small business owner to make it almost near impossible for almost anybody to get a new business off the ground because of the amount of regulations you have to go through, which drives up your cost to get the doors even open and then to operate the business, then the taxes they put on you. Mm-hmm. And the taxes they put on employees. If they really wanted to help us raise the minimum wage, they could simply do it by taking down a lot of the taxes on the businesses and allow the business owners to be able to have that money to pay their employees. And one of the things that I did was I always paid my employees on a principle I called replacement value. Mm-hmm. And when I had my own publishing business for 20 years, I would pay people, some people would get a 20% raise or more. Some people would get no raise. And they'd say, I heard so-and-so got this. Yeah, well, they've done X, Y, and Z to add value to the company. Mm-hmm. If you did not increase, I can go out and replace you at that same wage with people equally as competent. However, if you want to go back to school or you want to go do this, or you can figure out ways to add value to the company, add profit to the company, then I'll gladly share that with you. Mm-hmm. And that was my always principle. I looked at it. If that person walked out the door, what would it cost me in the market to find an employee as comparable as they to bring on? And I was not willing to let good people go by underpaying them. I didn't want them to ever leave, because not only could I have to pay that much money, but then I'd have to go through the agony of losing somebody who I'd liked and came close to. Mm-hmm. And then I'd have to go through their learning process and teach them how to really get them on board. And I go, I'd rather pay that good employee what they deserve, what it would cost me to replace them.
Yeah.
And so that was the principle I always paid people on. And I'm proud to say, with rare exception, I never lost an employee for anything other than personal reasons on their own, because I would pay them what it would have cost me if they left.
Yeah. Well, it's such a good thing that you just pointed out, that a lot of people who may not own businesses don't understand the hiring process. It's not like you're just bringing somebody on. There's like a whole onboarding. I mean, in my experience, it takes at least 3 months for the person to kind of be situated where they have the routine figured out. They kind of know the systems, and
you're taking a risk. Are they really going to? Are they really going to be what you think they are?
And it's funny that it's usually at the 3 month mark that you find out what their personality really is like, because people put their best face forward, and that's what everybody does. I'm not really like trying to knock anybody for doing that, but you find out who they really are at the 3 month mark, which is ironically how long it takes to train someone. But it's so interesting. So what else have you seen change over time as far as California policy? Do you think it's because we've had pretty much Democrat rule for like 60 years, at least on the state assembly side?
Well, we've had a super majority control the state for, I think it's 25, 26 years now.
Yeah.
And just for the audience benefit, super majority control means that they don't have to have any opposition to pass any bill they want or put anything on our ballots.
Yeah.
It gives them the ability to do anything they please to and want to do with no regard for any opposition, any compromise, or anything. But what I've seen happen significantly in this state is that big corporations figured out how to compete and take out their opposition. They don't want small startup companies. And those who make it through this network and actually get off the ground and become successful, they buy up. They want to buy up their composition. Yeah. And that's why if a small company becomes successful, these big corporations will buy them up. So they take them out of the market, take the best of what they've got into their company and go on. And we've allowed corporations to manipulate through the legislative process how to pass laws that make it onerous, burdensome for new companies to get off the ground. And then they use, for those who can become somewhat successful, they can attack them with lawsuits, trivial lawsuits that they can even make up, because you can sue anybody for almost anything.
Yeah.
And now it's going to cost a small business owner lots of money. And so they use loopholes in health laws and in handicap laws and other ways to go in and attack small businesses who are a threat to their market share, who are a threat to their profits, and they'll attack them with their vast resources, and they'll just file lawsuits and drain them and know that they can drain them, force them into taking on very expensive modifications and changes that they can afford, that I know a small business has difficulty in. So those are just a few of the types of things that they have done over and over and over again and piling on. California has over 420,000 regulations to exist in California. Oof. New York is just over 300,000, but the average of 48 states is somewhere in the neighborhood of 68,000 regulations.
Mm-hmm.
We have over 420,000 regulations to live and operate in California. And that's, they're into everything.
Almost 4 times as much as most states.
Oh, yeah. There was a big study done at from James Madison University on the number and types of regulations state by state. And it's just, when you see the glaringness of California and New York, how they stand out against how other states operate. It's pathetic.
Are they mostly environmental policies, or do we know where? Because I know
combination
CEQA,
of everything.
Yeah.
And CEQA is a big problem.
Yeah, especially for homeowners and developers. And I went to this meeting recently in Burbank. It was a lot of housing providers. So they're mom and pops who own buildings. A lot of them got hurt really bad during COVID with the eviction moratoriums. They got hurt really bad with the fires, and now there's another eviction moratorium that the Board of Supervisors in LA County just passed because of ICE. And it just did, even with all of these regulations and this hostile environment, it seems like the city is even taking a step further where they're like, we don't care about your business. We know that you're going to run out of business. We'll just get somebody else to buy it up, or we'll pump our own money into it, have one of our partners go in there, because they've done that before. They were giving out $120 million to different NGOs to develop motels. And it just happened this past couple of weeks. Bill Asaley had one of these guys who defrauded the state arrested. It took $150 million, I think. It was just throwing parties, never developed anything. Yeah. It's so unfortunate, yeah.
Well, people who keep re-electing and voting based upon a label, D or R or whatever, and they just mindlessly vote for a party, and they don't look around and say, wait a minute, what are the results of their policies?
Yeah.
And we keep re-electing these people. And despite what they say, and every election cycle, they get all the surveys, they know what we all want. They know what the problems are. And they come and tell us every election cycle what they're going to do for us, and then they don't deliver on it. And yet we keep re-electing people based upon a party label who don't deliver for us.
Yeah.
We've got to stop doing that, or nothing is going to change of substance.
That's so great that you bring that up, because this is actually something we were talking about earlier, right? Like party loyalty. You yourself, you were a Republican for a long time. I'll let you explain that. So how did you start being a Republican, and at what point did you move away from the party, and why?
Well, I was a typical person growing up here in California. I was a card-carrying member of the Students for Democratic Society and marched in protest against the Vietnam War when I was in school. I went from that to being a Republican conservative and a believer in Ronald Reagan's one of my heroes. I became a Republican in my early mid-20s when I read the principles behind the Republican Party that Abraham Lincoln had really founded. And it was a party created at the time to save the nation and free the slaves, and great principles of freedom and equality. And if I were to pull out a paper that I saved as I was a delegate to the Republican convention back in 1993, I was thinking in those days that I might run for office back in 1993. Congressman Chris Cox, an incredible congressman, got to befriend him, and we became good friends, and I worked on what he called his inner circle. And he made me his delegate to 1993 to the Republican. And I was very proud to be a Republican of the principles. But in 2000 and going up to 2010, let me back up and share a little story, because it's important, I think. Being a lifetime Republican based upon their principles, not seeing the results, though, being done, and I was discouraged with that. But then, as I was reflecting on the fact that I had lived the American dream, I had come out of the circumstances we talked about earlier, got to live this incredible life, become this presidents and CEOs, travel to Asia and Europe regularly, living in Laguna Beach where I got to raise my family. And
it's a beautiful area.
Oh, It'll always be my home and my heart.
Yeah.
And I lived there 35 years.
Yeah.
And I was getting close to my 60th birthday, and I was reflecting upon how I had this opportunity. And I was remembering as I would sit on the floor as a little boy at the reunions of my father, of his Army's unit that had survived World War II. And I was reflecting on the stories that I heard them talk about, how they were on a troop transport ship one day out of San Francisco on December 7th, 1941. Had they left a day earlier, they would have been in Pearl Harbor that morning.
Wow.
They got turned around. They ended up in Iceland for a year, guarding the Reykjavik airfields, because they thought Hitler was going to come that way. After D-Day, he was a radio man. He flew in the back seat of a two-man glider into France. He ended up in the Battle of the Bulge, 90 miles west of Berlin on VE Day. The sacrifices, what they had seen, they had come through that prison camp of Mengeles, who had done all of those horrific experiments on their prisoners.
Yeah.
He never talked about that ever, with one exception in his entire life at the house. But I was reflecting on their sacrifices. And then I was in that first lottery for Vietnam. But 2 years earlier, when I was graduating high school, two of my classmates had been killed in Vietnam who had left school before graduating already. And I was given a draft number out of the Gardena draft board of 166. The draft board went to 162. There, but for the grace of God, I could have gone. By the time I left San Diego State after 4 years, many of the guys that entered as a freshman, I did, never came back. They were killed. Many of those who did come back that I had met as freshmen had been severely wounded and were never the same. One of my best friends to this day was a machine gunner on one of those helicopters in Vietnam who got wounded. And I was reflecting on how fortunate I was. And that was when I was watching. We go through 2008, 9, and 10, 7, 8, 9, and 10. What started out as a business slowdown that became a recession. It became a depression for many Americans. Millions of Americans were losing their homes. And our government bails out the banks. Well,
and the banks turned around and gave themselves raises
and
bonuses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They bailed out the banks, and it was like, they kept telling us, well, it's to save the economy, and all kinds of lip service to it. So they bail out the banks, and 6 months later, 5 months later, we're watching the Affordable Care Act be voted on and debated. And here again, our government can't come up with a quality, affordable care for Americans. And it's like, wait a minute. They just bailed out these banks at billions of dollars, huge amounts of money, while millions of Americans were losing their homes. And now, 6 months later, they can't come up with a quality, affordable health care for Americans. What's going on? And I turned to my then girlfriend and now wife, and I said, I got to figure out what's going on. And I said, starting tomorrow morning, I'm going to get up an extra hour early and start researching what is at the core of this. I quickly learned that the core of the problem was the corruption that had consumed the leadership of both parties. So by late 2010, I resigned from the Republican Party and went independent, no party preference. So I could work from the outside to help reform our government. And I launched a nonprofit with a young guy who had graduated from UCLA, who was a writer on my staff. And we formed a nonprofit together. He was he had just turned 23-year-old anarchist who had started a club at UCLA called the Bruin Anarchists, which I didn't know about it. I'm trying to keep the story somewhat short, but
still interesting.
And I was a 60-year-old Reagan conservative.
Working with an anarchist.
And together, but what we had learned and shared with each other. When we started having these political discussions outside of the office, he opened my eyes and helped me learn so much as I was opening his eyes to another perspective on the world. And we came together and founded a nonprofit called Rebellious Truths. And the mission statement of Rebellious Truths was to galvanize, educate, organize, and activate the millennial generation and others to lead a responsible, and that's a key word in the mission statement, responsible revolution to reform our political system. The slogan for Rebellious Truths was to bring the light to truth, seeking justice for all. And we launched this nonprofit. We had 9 core videos. 3 of them went #1 on YouTube. We had over 5 million views on our videos.
Amazing.
Back in 2011 and 12.
Yeah.
And then we got censored. But after the election of 2012, and in January, I had 5 paid staff that we were paying. They were all millennials. I was the only non-millennial in that group. You're a millennial.
Yeah.
You would have 12 years ago. You would have been right there.
Yeah.
Because they're all now aged out to where you are, and they came to me with tears in their eyes. The 5 of them, including my co-founder, and said they were overwhelmed with what they had learned in the 2 years in 2011 and 12, and they said they thought it was impossible, and they said we've got to go on with our lives. So
impossible with what?
To reform the government because of what they'd learned.
So they gave up?
They gave up. And I said, I understand where you're at in your lives. I'm at a stage in my life where, and a year later, I made the commitment to dedicate my life to this effort because I had lived that American dream. And I had the opportunity and I wanted to take the opportunity to do that. And so we shut it down. The end of January 2013, the nonprofit, despite we had over 42,000 millennials who had signed a pledge through our Facebook and our website that they were millennial, committed to starting truth cells to hold our public officials, our union leaders, our corporate leaders to a higher standard of truth and accountability so that we could try to turn this around.
And that's such a good message. It's unfortunate, but I think they kind of saw the writing on the wall because it got really dark. The years that followed, it got so dark. I mean, especially it incrementally got dark, but from like 2017 to I would say like mid 2021, with all the censorship happening on social media, and you experienced some of it at the beginning of it when I was working on the media side too, but I was mostly doing entertainment stuff. But I got to kind of see how everything evolved, not in the political sense. So it's interesting to see that perspective. And honestly, I rag on my generation a lot. I say that we're largely responsible for the cultural setting that we have now. All this stuff that's happening, I think, unfortunately, and I think 2 things, and you may disagree with me because you've also worked with some folks in my generation, but I think that because we grew up in the Bush era and there was such a huge push against Bush and Cheney and the military industrial complex, and I feel like there was a little bit of trauma that went in there of us seeing this war playing out first seeing 9/11, then seeing the war, then the lie about Iraq, and then right when we're getting into the working, to work, graduating college, then you have the housing crisis and you can't get a job.
And student debt.
That was that was crazy. I think we were the first generation that was really burdened by student debt. And instead of actually getting a mortgage, most people would get a mortgage, but we had student debt. So it was like, we have to pay this off before we even get a home.
Your generation, I cut you from a different perspective, a lot of slack, because you were burdened with those things. What you did was just what seemed appropriate, what was culturally done. You were the first generation that had cell phones, had the iPads, were watching all the videos. And so it was innocent. You were innocently manipulated and used, our patriotism, etc., and burdened with these debts. And so I look at it, I love the millennial generation. My son is that. All the people in rebellious truths, they're to me still family. I love these young people and your generation. And I look at it that one of the reasons I've dedicated my life to help solve it so that I can turn over to future generations the kind of opportunities to thrive that I was given. And we're facing some enormous challenges right now. But so I feel the opposite about you and your generation.
But I see that too.
I want to help you. I don't want to work.
I rag on my generation, but I see that the cultural problem of the moment why we're here now, where it's like where people are trying to normalize transitioning children. I think it comes purely out of my generation, out of just we grew up. Like nowadays, it's pretty much established that Marxists have taken over the school system and they're indoctrinating children. That's why there's such a huge homeschooling movement happening right now, right? But back when I was in school, I mean, I thinking about it now, like in the 10th grade, I was reading Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States without being told that the
proctologist view of America.
Yeah, exactly. That the guy is just an open communist, and like I wasn't being told that. You know, I was like, oh, this is a different perspective. We're not going to read the usual textbook, history textbook, and look at it from the usual perspective. We're going to look at it from the oppressors, the oppressed,
the victims,
the victim's perspective. Yeah, and that's just purely Marxist, you know. And that back then, I didn't have the toolkit to understand it. I just kind of was like, and it built a resentment around. And I love America, I really do. Even then, as I was reading through this really warped perspective of American history, and that's the only way I can say it. It's really warped because it just uniquely frames America as uniquely evil in the world because of our history. When in fact, I mean, slavery as a system, for example, existed far before we existed as a nation. We inherited that system, and we were one of the first nations to abolish it. Yes, it's something evil that happened, but we took the steps to end it, right? We never look at it through that. I never got the chance to look at it through that perspective, right? I always looked at it, slavery is America's first sin. We haven't dealt with it. We haven't done anything. We all, you know, it's like we're awful people for this. So it kind of strips God a little bit from it because there's no forgiveness. It's always like you're bad, and it made me feel bad for being born here, for wanting to be a part of America, and it made me resentful. And that's ultimately what made me. I wasn't a member of either party for the longest time because I thought. I was an independent, registered independent. I because of Bush and Cheney, I couldn't be a Republican, even though I was very moderate with a lot of things. But
they sold us out.
Yeah. In many regards, and then with the Democrats, I mean, seeing Hillary, I was like, I cannot do that either. She looks like another version of what's going on with Republicans. So, and I know a lot of people in my age bracket that feel that way as well. Now I'm a Republican, but I'm purely because I see a different dynamic now. The Republican Party matches pretty much most of my values. And also because we've devolved from like a two-party system to effectively team sports, I feel like I have to choose a side if I want my principles to win.
You've raised a number of really important issues. We could go on and talk for far beyond this podcast. But I think it's important to take the opportunity to talk about what I refer to as the grand new party. That's why I was proud to rejoin the Republican Party and run for Congress when I saw Kennedy and Trump come together.
That was a great moment.
Yeah. And for the audience, it's really important to understand, on July 12th, Friday, July 12th, Robert Kennedy Jr. was the keynote speaker at the Libertarian Convention in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. The second half of his keynote address was the explanation of his commitment to form a unity government modeled after Abraham Lincoln, where he was committing to the libertarian audience that he would have a minimum of one libertarian, one Republican, one Democrat, one member of the Peace and Freedom Party, independents on his cabinet, so he could bring the best of thinking from different perspectives together to help America get through this time and heal our nation. We had all the merch ready. I was working on the Kennedy campaign. We had all the merch ready to roll out on Monday, following his speech. Hashtag America Strong, unity government. I had two 40-foot banners ready. We started bannering with on the freeways for that Monday.
Yeah.
All redesigned with this unity government. Saturday in Butler was the assassination attempt on Trump. Mm-hmm. That evening, they talked. Different stories about who called who, but bottom line of it is they talked that evening. And then that started, and Trump invited Kennedy to meet him in Milwaukee the next day. Mm-hmm. Kennedy went there with some of his staff, including Amaryllis, the chief of staff, and others. And they started a series of meetings face-to-face with Trump and his staff and our staff together. And over the next 6 weeks is when the decision was made to end the campaign for Kennedy and join forces with Trump. And on August 23rd, when Trump came out and announced that Kennedy was joining his team and this team of unity, I looked at that and I said, that is what I can get behind. That is exactly what I believe will help bring our nation through this period, which is a civil war, not in bullets, and hopefully it never will get to what it was before. This civil war that's going on helps save our nation, the ideal of America, the concept of what America is, that concept of our founding fathers who didn't leave us a perfect union, but they left us a path towards one. And one of the themes of my campaign is that we must get back on that path together. But that is when I started thinking, and I changed, and as one of the state and county and national leaders for Kennedy's team, I became one of the leading voices on behalf of why we needed to support Trump and help give them the explanations of what we were up against as a unity party that had been exposed at the Democratic Convention. And slowly but steadily, over the course of the next weeks before leading up to the vote, we were able to convert at least 95% of the former Democrats or former Trump haters to vote for Trump, realizing that this unity team, headed up by Trump and Kennedy and Gabbard and the rest, almost all of them former Democrats.
Yeah. Even Elon, too, former Democrat.
Yeah, pretty much everybody was a former Democrat. That is what, so when we won the vote on November 5th, my phone was blowing up from WhatsApp, Signal, all these different messages. What are you going to do, Maxenti? What should we do? And I described it to everybody simply this way. Sit tight. It hasn't been certified yet. That doesn't happen until January 6th. A lot could change, as we've witnessed in 2020.
Yeah.
But think of it this way. All we have proven is, and I use the World War II analogy, all we've proven is that we could puncture their control of our government. We've landed on the beaches of Normandy, but they still control the vast resources of our government and of the world, and they're only going to intensify their effort. So buckle up, sit tight, and be ready. This is a long battle. Once we got off those beaches in Normandy, it was a 2-year plus bloody battle to win the war, and there's still Nazis today.
Yeah.
Though that thinking doesn't ever go away. It's an ongoing fight. But then when the vote was certified, and so every morning between September 5th and November 6th, not only was I doing all these bannering events and still continue with our effort, but I literally every morning, as part of my morning ritual, is I pray, I meditate, and I would think, what should I do with the learning and the journey that I've been given at this time? So when the vote was certified on January 6th, I sat down with my wife a couple days later and we talked about it. We'd been blessed with a small inheritance from an uncle who had passed away. And it was like she's an amazing woman, and she's been at my side through this whole thing. Said, let's volunteer, let's commit to doing this. And that's when I then started the process to consider and then making it firm that I was going to run for Congress. And on Sunday, I rejoined the Republican Party, but not to be part of the grand old party, but to be part of the grand new party that's in formation, that is a populist common sense movement to represent the people's interests, to stand up against those globalist interests, those people who see our humanity as nothing. They see themselves as lower G gods. And they're willing to send us off to wars endlessly. They're willing to make more profits, knowingly selling us food and medicines and environmental things that are poisoning us, making us sick and killing us. These problems didn't just happen. And that's what I proudly have joined. And I'm proud to go back to Washington to be a part of helping clean up and bring ethical governance back, help us focus on everything that's constitutional, hold everyone, including myself, to the Constitution, and help build this grand new party, populist common sense that represents the people's interest to heal our nation and bring us together. And that's what I'm committed to.
That's beautiful. I'm so happy that we have people like you running with that kind of mission, because it's, now there's this whole thing of like the big tent party, and we've taken so many of these groups of Democrats and no party preference and independents that have come in. And you really see it that it's more of a party of ideas now than, it's not the party like I was mentioning earlier, Bush and Cheney. It's not that party anymore. It doesn't feel like it. And I've been to meetings all throughout the county and in different parts of the state, and even in Orange County, it feels like there's a reinvigoration with a party. There's an excitement of like, okay, we have this new mission. We have this which is to effectively save America from Marxism. I feel like that's part of it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say specific Marxism as much as this one world order vision of a one world government where people see themselves as the lucky elites. I've used since I started on this journey the example from the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Those books and those movies, that woman who wrote those was very public that she wrote those books to help wake up the millennial generation and others to the long-term consequences of the path our government was on. Mm-hmm. And I know The Handmaid's Tale was not written with that political intent, but the reason it kept going, and they did multiple seasons, was they realized the connection of how quickly our freedoms can be taken away by ideologues who get into power and think they're doing the right thing, but not for humanity's benefit, for a few. For
themselves, yeah.
And the new effort, and there's so many issues and problems that have to be dealt with, that many things appear on the surface to be authoritarian because of the way that what they're having to fight and change. But it's so crucial that we hold a majority in Congress so that we can see the results of the policies that Kennedy and Trump and others are trying that are changing. Like I say to people, you're not going to go to Disneyland next year and all of a sudden look around and see a much healthier visitor crowd. You're not going to see that dramatic change in a year. It's going to take years for us to be able to say, wow, look at how much healthier Americans are today. We've dropped that diabetes rate, that obesity rate significantly. That takes time. The food processors and people are getting on board. I truly believe the vast majority of people want to do the right thing if they're given the opportunity to and they're incentivized to. And you see it all around us now from the MAHA movement. People everywhere are talking about what's in your food, what are we eating, what vaccines are you taking, what's in those vaccines? Should I take them all now or should I spread them out over the next 6 years? People are questioning medical freedom and freedom of all kinds. People are excited about and reinvigorated to seek freedom again, and at the same token, advance health. And one of the things about MAHA that I'd like to point out to people, and Kennedy was real clear about it, it was make America healthy again, physically, mentally, spiritually, and environmentally. I add to that economically as well. Because one of the things that's caused your generation and where we're at today, where most of our children, my children, have to live outside of the state and had to move away, or they can't even live in the neighborhoods that they grew up in if they can still afford to stay here. These problems didn't just happen overnight. Since the mid-'70s, corporations and started realizing how they could manipulate through the Congress to write regulations and laws that would benefit them and take down labor and be able to increase their profits. If you adjust for inflation since the mid-'70s, when they started in on this process, almost 100% of the entire economic gains of the productivity enhancements since the mid-'70s have all gone into the hands of the managerial and ownership class. And that is what has destroyed, for the vast majority of Americans, the middle class, and has ended that middle class expansion and turned it into now almost no middle class at all. All of that economic benefit has gone into fewer and fewer hands. And the concentration of wealth in this country is unacceptable. And now that we're facing AI and what that is going to offer us, this is where this issue of ethical governance is so crucial at this time. Because I'll give the example of when the Industrial Revolution came along. The Industrial Revolution created new levels of freedom and prosperity for billions, literally, of people around the world, lifting people to new heights of freedom and prosperity never before dreamed of or seen. It also unleashed new weapons of mass destruction never before even envisioned, from the machine gun to the atom bomb. fast forward now to where we are, the developments of technology and AI, where we're at is an opportunity, if guided with ethical governance. AI and the technology can lift the yoke of work off of the shoulders of humanity to levels, I believe, God, spirit, whatever people choose to call it, can give us. I believe there's much more to the evolution of humanity than everybody being a worker bee and having to work just to survive. Mm-hmm. That there's something much more for us waiting in life. And this is an opportunity with technology and AI, et cetera, to lift that yoke of work off of the shoulders of the vast majority of humanity, to give new levels of freedom and creativity and relationships and love that we can explore and move towards. Or it can be used to destroy humanity in ways only science fiction possibly dreamed of. Yeah. And as we see it wiping out swaths of workers, jobs, what are those people going to do? How are they going to survive? Are they going to become dependent upon the government and more enslaved? Or are we going to take the benefits of AI and technology, share that with humanity, and lift us to new heights of freedom and prosperity and love and relationships? And that's one of the reasons I want to be in Congress right now, because these decisions need to be out in the front of conversations. We need citizens assemblies. We need people involved so that we can help create that more beautiful and just future that our hearts know is possible.
Yeah, those are such great questions because, Democrats have already been floating this, their solution to it, which is UBI. It's universal basic income, which would just tie people further to government. It would
it's
make
a
them more
survival
dependent.
level.
Yeah.
Versus a generous universal income.
Well, I think
which frees people.
Exactly. Well, I think if we just reduced regulations and allowed people, because just if we take it back to the last boom, which was the internet, right? That created millions, an unimaginable amount of businesses that people have online now. Yeah. They can have businesses on Amazon, on every place. They can just start a website, and that could be. That's how Google started, right? It was just like a random website that didn't exist up until like 2006 or whatever. It was like the same thing with YouTube. So, it'll create a universe of endless possibilities for businesses to start. But if it's rushed in to have this remedy before people even get the chance to go and create, I would say deregulate. Keep a watchful eye on the AI, and then I'm very much small government Republican. I would,
I am as well.
Yeah. So I'm like, keep the social safety net small, and yes, I'm against it, but at the same time, I recognize the usefulness of it. Right.
Well, the one thing I would add to keeping government small and small business, which I'm a believer in local, is the solution. The more local you can create anything, the higher the level of integrity, the more benefits. You're not dependent upon chains. So local to me is one of the key answers, but freedom is at the crux. Why did America surpass the nation? Obviously, we had the benefits of being on the North American continent.
Yeah.
And we were heavily benefited from the Iroquois nation and their form of government, which really had a dramatic impact on Benjamin Franklin and Washington and the rest of our founders. But freedom is at the crux of what we can create, is you free people up with deregulations, et cetera, and you bring it back to local. But at the same token, we have where we are. You have to recognize where we are today. And that's where I want to emphasize the need for compassion and how do we go from where we are to put us on a path towards where we want to go, always knowing the vision of a more beautiful world, a more beautiful and just world. But what is the next thing we must do and accomplish? And that is to get government on the side of the people, raise the ethical level of it, increase the transparency, increase citizen participation, and free up the process that was envisioned by our founders so that we can make these corrections and move ahead.
I think that our members of Congress and even the state legislature to a more radical degree, they are so used to dictating our lives. but they won't do anything to hold themselves accountable.
Oh, yeah.
There's you rarely ever see them pass any bills to increase congressional transparency or anything, which is something that I think a lot of Americans are very much for. But I feel like I could talk with you for hours. So, but I know you have stuff to do too. But let's. I'm
available to continue this for a few more minutes if you want. Because
we could go on for a few more minutes.
Yeah.
No, we can go for. But I would want to take a moment and just give you a chance if you want to just look into that camera and then tell people how they can find you, your website, how they can donate to you, volunteer to you, your social media.
All right. My name is Michael Maxenti, and you can find me at maxsentiforcongress.com. And I would ask people, we're only going to be able to do what we've talked about here if we have the resources available to us. So if you can donate your money, obviously that is singularly important at this moment so that we can expand our reach to the audience necessary. If you can't offer a lot of money, your time, your commitment to skills and contacts and other resources available, go to our website. There you can sign up and click off on, I think there's 8 or 9 things you can volunteer, but your financial donations would be greatly appreciated right now. This is a grassroots effort. And I would like to share briefly one quick thing that's important to the story for people. They see me as a successful business person. And yes, I had a wonderfully successful business life, made a lot of money. I sold my business in 2014 when I made the commitment to dedicate my life to this effort, realizing that there was nothing more important that I could do with the journey that I've been given than to help reform our government. And this is my sacrifice of time. I sold my business to an investment banker. A year later, they defaulted on the loan after never receiving a payment on the principals that I carried back, my wife and I. It wiped out our retirement. So I was faced with a choice. Go back to work in the corporate world with my resume, go find some big corporate job and make a lot of money again, or figure out a way to stay in this effort, in this fight that I had started on. A friend of mine recommended, why don't you go drive Uber? I took my pension from American Standard early. I took Social Security early, and I gave over 4,000 rides for Uber. I even worked for a limousine service so that I could stay in this fight, so I could go on and off work, to be able to travel the country, hold all these meetings that I was a part of, make these calls, and be able to sustain it without putting upon my family or friends any of the loss that my wife and I did. Many people have losses in life. Many people came to this country with nothing. It's not the fact that happened to you, it's how you respond to it. And my response to it was to say, we'll do whatever it takes to stay in this fight, because this fight for our nation, for the future of our country and everyone, is that important to me, as I'm sure it is to you. So your support would be greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you for that, Michael. I didn't know about that detail that they did that to you. That honestly, genuinely pisses me off. I don't know any other way to say it. It's awful that happened to you. I'm really grateful that we have people like you in the party, because you have a business background. You are committed to service. Like we were just talking about career politicians. I am so sick of them, and I think most people are. And we need people like yourself who have real world experience, who are committed to service, who will do it regardless of pay or not pay. And just you're committed to improving our community. And that's the difference between the elite guy that you said that you're running against. That's them. That's the Democrat Party. We are the party of the common man. We're real people who have worked, who have a stake in this country, and who want to see it better. And that's why I appreciate you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My wife jokes with me. It was tough at times, but she calls me Benjamin Buttons. And I because I got to live that American dream. And I was reflecting on the fact that my friends at 18, 19, 20, they died, as my father's generation did, on the belief of what America could be as patriots to this country. They never had the opportunity to live it. So I look at it and I joke with my wife when things have been tough. No one shot at me yet.
Yeah.
I haven't eaten any meals out of a ration can. And I haven't spent a night in a rainy foxhole. So if this is as tough as it gets, bring it on.
Well, that's amazing. And you just highlighted something that I think is a bit lost nowadays. It's a sacrifice that so many have done so that we can have the freedoms that we have nowadays. And I think that, it's been that there's been a bit of a disconnect. And I don't want to lay so much on my generation, but it feels like my generation and the generation coming after me have kind of like lost touch with that a bit.
Well, and part of that is being second generations away from that major sacrifice. That's why our immigrant communities that have recent immigrant communities, because we've all been immigrant communities except for our Native Americans, but that's why the Vietnamese, the Cambodians, the Thais, the Chinese, we have these incredible people from these countries that why they were willing to sacrifice everything, literally, to come across and get to America, because they saw the loss of freedom and how fragile it is. That's why some of our most incredible Americans were direct descendants from these countries, and they populate everywhere around us, and they've infused their culture into America and made it that great melting pot that we envision, and have added so much to our culture. And at the same token, they are scared because they saw how fragile freedom can be taken away. And some of them never even had it, and why it's so precious to them. So these people chose freedom. They were willing to sacrifice for it. And that's where the unfortunate thing is, the millennial generation now, the Gen X, the Gen Xers, and the new kids being born, like my grandson that was born granddaughter just a week ago, my
congratulations,
fourth grandchild. But they were at an arm's distance. And like my father never talked about the sacrifices of war. It was only because I had the benefit of sitting there as a child on the floor at those reunions that I learn of it and read about it and see the movies of it. You and your generation and the newer kids never had that benefit, because the reality of those war movies and what their sacrifice was not taught to you in school, and it wasn't taught to you as something to be respected, because you were being taught to disrespect America for its warts, for the problems that we have. We've had a history, which is a whole other subject, that we need to be a holistic understanding of it, but put in context to what's gone on and still goes on around the world. Slavery still exists around the world, and human trafficking is a huge issue that is high on my priorities. This is my wife's number one issue, is human trafficking. There's so many problems, but we can turn it around by working together. And that's the solution will be found when we come together. And that's what I'm committed to. I know young people like yourself and others are committed to it. And I'm glad to have a young millennial like you who's willing to step up, make the sacrifice, because few people realize what a true sacrifice it is to run for office, how much you give up to do this.
You end up having, you travel around a lot, you meet a lot of people, you're sometimes you'll be in uncomfortable situations, but it's a part of, and I mean that in the sense, like I was just walked Hollywood for the first time, and I was walking to people's doors and leaving flyers, and I didn't have a map, so I was just going to whatever doors. Usually for the folks at home, you're knocking on Republican doors. And to do it in Hollywood, I don't think the Republican Party's on a walk here in a few years. So that was I don't know. It felt great, but at the same time, I was like, well, what's gonna happen? Is somebody gonna pull a gun on me because I'm a Republican? I don't know. Obviously, I don't think that would happen, but you never know. But
Charlie Kirk was assassinated not for what he said, but for what others said about him.
That is true.
And that's what we have to guard against, is seeking the whole truth together, making sure that we really hear in context what people say, and accept the fact that this is America. We have a right to free speech, and that means protecting the speech that is uncomfortable to us, but makes us challenge and think a second time about our own values. And I know we're beyond what we wanted to talk in terms of time, but there's this concept of thinking a second time is so important for people. Because of what happened to Charlie Kirk, it became paramount in my thinking again, is that we're taught as young people by those people around us, hopefully those who have a family and a good family, but many don't, but through culture, through the medias that we're exposed to, you adapt principles and values based upon the influences around you. Well, the challenge is now, as you grow in life's experiences, to go back to those and reevaluate those values in light of what you've learned and seen and experienced. That's how bigotry, hate gets passed down from generation to generation, is because they're people of influence on a young person. They influence and teach them that hatred, that bigotry, et cetera, that racism. And then we don't step back as we grow and think a second time and a third. And as you mature in life, constantly be reevaluating and be open-minded to what are the basis for why you feel the way you do, so that you can continually evolve to higher levels of consciousness and awareness. And hopefully that'll lead you to more relationships that are loving and kind and compassionate towards each other.
I love that, Michael. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank
I look
you.
forward to talking to you some more.
Thanks.